All right. My name is Leo Herrera, and you're listening to A Bumpy Ride, a diary from Berlin during the monkeypox outbreak. I arrived in Berlin about a month ago, May 27th. There were 30 cases, and at that time, monkeypox was mostly a joke and a really good punchline at that. And it has now gone from 30 cases to 850 in Germany and crossed 5,000 cases worldwide yesterday. Monkeypox is currently affecting mostly men who have sex with men. Berlin being the sexual playground that it is, this was not the vacation that I had planned. So, this is honestly the last thing I want to be doing. I wasn't expecting to be recording something like this. It's not completely out of my tool house to talk about disease. I've been a AIDS historian for a really long time and was able to navigate a lot of the COVID pandemic through the lessons of HIV. However, the way that things have been unfolding in Berlin, the fact that I would be here on vacation as this thing is seemingly spinning out of control, it would behoove me to sit here and talk to y'all about just what's going on, what it feels like. So I felt it was probably a good idea, not only for the community, but for my own sanity to document what's been going on. Now, let's talk about the title. Um, One thing that queer people are phenomenal at is using humor and camp to talk about the darkest episodes of our lives and of our history. And there has been a lot of really good monkeypox jokes. And I was at Tom's Bar, which is one of the bars here in Berlin where everybody gathers. And my friend said, I got it. This is all going to be a really bumpy ride. And that's the way to look at it, isn't it? Rides end. We don't know how long they'll be. This is a very bumpy time for us. 10 years ago, I was working with ACT UP activists on HIV criminalization laws. And HIV criminalization laws date back to the 80s, and they stigmatize and criminalize HIV. So people who have used condoms but not disclosed their HIV status are being thrown in jail in the South. And we were going to a conference in Washington, and we had a very long road trip from New York. And I was in the car with one of my heroes for about 7 hours. And he was telling me stories of his youth in the countryside and the things that he'd done. And I had this wonderful experience and this threesome with these wonderful men, and we wore tuxes and went to the opera. And the next summer we found a lesion. And each one of those stories ended with the lesion. And that's where they stopped. And that's where we knew exactly what happened after that. Everybody knows what happened in the 80s after you found a lesion. So I found myself a week ago with one of my favorite people in Berlin. We were outside having a beautiful Turkish meal. Everybody around us was having a wonderful time. Berlin has just opened up in so many different ways from the winter to their COVID shutdown. And the conversation, faster than I thought, turned to monkeypox. And he opened with, so-and-so and so-and-so found a lesion today. And that is the reason why they hadn't come into work. And I realized that the echoes of these journeys reverberate for a very, very long time. And so lesions have been the conversation topic for about 10 days now. How to spot them, how to not spot them, what they are, what they aren't, the morning checkups, the mosquito bite that I got at the lake that sent me into a 15-minute spiral, the feathers sticking out of my pillow that scratched my neck up and made me think I had a rash, all of the things that we did 12 days prior, which put us all into the window of danger for this, and the people that did get sick and did get the lesions and didn't get the information necessary. And a vain, sensual people dealing with lesions on their face is something that historically digs into the root of so much of our trauma, so much of our sexual shame, and so much of the medical negligence that we've had to deal with. So, this is the last thing I want to be talking about. I'm supposed to be on my first big vacation after COVID. I'm supposed to be running around in Berlin's sexual playground and having a really good time. But I'm old enough to know now that sometimes responsibilities fall on you at what are seemingly the worst possible moments, but they become really, really useful for people. That's something that I learned growing up as a young HIV activist. Before we had PrEP, before we had ways to stop it before it entered our body, I saw the importance of it. I saw the importance of it through my elders. I saw the relief on their face. And I experienced this through COVID by starting a social media presence that really filtered COVID through the HIV history lens. So I think it's really funny that I am in Berlin in the center of a hotspot for what could potentially be an STI that we deal with for a very long time, experiencing the same government negligence, the same sexual shame, the same stigma that we always do. So the irony is not lost on me, and the responsibility can't be lost on me either. So this is why I'm sitting here on a hot day instead of being out in the park getting drunk and cruising and talking about skin lesions, which, is kind of a bummer. One of the things that makes disease really interesting is the human patterns. There's stages of grief, really, when it comes to disease. Nobody is outside of these stages. The choices that we make in the beginning of these moments of disease are really what stick with us for a really long time. I'll be real honest with you, I'm fucking freaked out. This isn't fun. This isn't the kind of clout chasing, social media blitzkrieg campaign that I want to be on. But I'm nervous that these moments, especially when it comes to people like me, men who have sex with men, we get left real fast and we get stigmatized and we get scapegoated all the time. So I'm having trouble going to bed and I'm having trouble not doom scrolling and I'm having a really tough time controlling my own worst impulses of not just how I see other gays, but how I see myself. So whatever exercise I need to do right now to put that in check and to turn a negative into a positive is something that I'm going to have to do. And it's not something that I want to be doing. But we don't get to pick when Mother Nature comes knocking, and she likes to double down on things. And I'm thinking about all of this as a hurricane that's forming in the Gulf. And you prepare for a hurricane and you pray that it doesn't come. And you find joy and humor in the small moments of it. But right now, I'm trying to hunker down and observe what storm is coming our way, because it's not the first time. It's not going to be the last time. And there's been other ones that have formed that nothing's come out of them except for a lot of fright and a lot of stigma and a lot of lessons. So I'm just waiting, and I'm really grateful to have the patience and the time and the privilege and the age to just fucking sit still for a minute and watch this. Okay, well, now that we got that out of the way, okay. If you know anything about me, is that I cry at the drop of a hat, and I also get the giggles when I get nervous. So I knew about a week and a half ago that this shit might hit the fan when I posted on my social media. I was telling folks that I wasn't going to change my pride plans, but that I was going to be a little extra vigilant. And I got a DM from one of the biggest porn stars in the world letting me know that they were on week 2 of monkeypox and asked me if I could call him. So I thought, how bad could this be? I'm heading to dinner. Let me just make this call real quick. And it was eye-opening. And I wanted to reach across the phone and give them a big hug because they were on week 2 of the isolation. And when he got diagnosed with it, he was treated like shit by the health department in the city that he was at. And you know what a porn star doesn't like? Lesions on his face. And he was sobbing on the phone and he was saying, "They're on my fucking face, Leo. They're on my fucking face." And that's when I realized we might be in for something that is outside of our mental and emotional capacity, especially after the last 2 years. A lot of us don't have insurance, and a lot of us might have high-profile jobs, but we don't have the safety nets, especially in America. And right now, my DMs are full of people letting me know just how fucking scary this thing is and how scary it looks. This also has a potential to be really, really traumatic. And we already have issues associating sex with body horror. It's been in our history for a really long time. And whether it was because of disease or what other governments did to us because of our sexuality, body horror is an association that we have with our sexuality from the very beginning. So it's really important for us to talk about these things. My inbox right now has about a dozen people describing their pustules, describing their fevers, describing what it's been like to be alone in their house. And each of those people know 5 people who are dealing with the same thing. So right now is the stage where we have to really, really talk about it. Now, when somebody gets COVID, you can't shut them up about it online. We got the little test. We got the little still life with the test and the Robitussin or the bottle of wine. We got the "Welp, I got it" memes. We got so many things to pick from to let everybody know you got COVID. In 2022, we get it. Literally, we all got it. But we don't have that language right now. And that language is really important to stop the spread of this. So part of the reason that I'm sitting here talking about it is because talking about it literally stops the spread of these diseases. What we know about HIV is that it thrives in silence. That's how viruses work. That's how diseases work. That's how pandemics work. They don't like it when we communicate with each other. Nature doesn't like that very much. You know, she's always trying to shut us up. So by us sitting here having these conversations with each other, we're able to communicate with each other and inform one another. So the question for today is, if you were to have monkeypox right now, why wouldn't you tell people on the internet in the same way that you would if you got COVID? What is in there for you to unpack? What does that tell you about who you believe that you are and what you've done to quote unquote deserve it? The most important thing that I asked that activist after he told me in that road trip about the lesions, I was very tired. I was tired of being in my early 30s and thinking about HIV all the time. And I just flat out turned and asked him, "Do you think AIDS was a punishment?" And I knew that that might be an inappropriate thing to ask a 65-year-old man who had seen so much. And he very matter-of-factly turned to me and he said, "AIDS was not a punishment. AIDS was neglect. We were neglected and we were left to die. And they allowed this virus to run rampant and to kill so many of us." So one thing that's really important to remember from HIV and absolutely from COVID is that neglect is at the root of why these things happen and that they're not a punishment. We have no idea where this thing is going. We don't know where this journey is going. Hopefully nowhere. Hopefully we get over this fast. Hopefully the vaccines are deployed fast. Hopefully this little brush fire that we're having gets burnt out fast. And all our community gets to recover and gets the reminders that are needed. But for now, we're on this bumpy ride. So remember to keep an eye on the numbers in your community. Do some body checks, but don't freak yourself out too much. And if you are someone who has been dealing with the homophobia from the health agencies, the negligence from doctors, any kind of oppression from these systems, that you know would help the community health better if you spoke up about it, please start letting people know. These agencies always need to be held accountable for the way that they treat us. So we are now in a holding pattern waiting for the WHO to declare an emergency. We are waiting for governments to fucking pass out these vaccines that are stockpiled already. So just keep an eye out on how different things would look like if it wasn't just us. And make sure that you pass around information to one another as much as possible. We don't need to see your pockmarks on your Facebook profile. That's not necessary. We also don't need to scare the shit out of everybody. But it's really important for you not only to let your partners know, but to let the rest of us know how you're doing. Because really, as a community, we are really fantastic at taking care of one another. And this is going to be one of the biggest opportunities that we've had in a really long time to do so. Hopefully we won't be on this bumpy ride for too long. I'll see you in the next communique.